All right, we are live again. Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. I know I'm so chipper as we're still counting the ballots, but hey, you know, we all need a little boost of good energy. My name is Olga Bolotina. I am here to present to you In the Know, where we invite local heroes, really, who are working on environmental and sustainability issues and changing our lives in real time in real ways. So I am extremely excited to invite my friend and an activist, long-term activist, Andy Katz, who a lot of you probably know, especially if you've been volunteering with the Sierra Club or been affiliated with the Sierra Club. So I'm very excited to actually get to know Andy a little bit better myself also. Let me give you a little bit of introduction. I'm going to read it. It's a little bit unusual for me. I try to do it off the cuff, but Andy done a lot of work, so I'm going to try to fit it all in. So Andy in his day work is workers' rights and environmental attorney, and he served as an elected board member of EBMUD, East Bay Municipal Utility District, since 2007. And it's a huge facility that treats our water and deals with East Bay water. So as part of his work on the board, Andy fought to stop a new dam on Pardee Reservoir to pass California Wild and Scenic River designation, protecting the Mokelumne River, and also worked to double water conservation and recycling projects and to innovate ways to recycle food scraps into renewable energy, which is an incredible project. I love it. We all need to compost and to turn our compost into energy and into usable materials. Andy also served as a chair of the Sierra Club California. And as a chair of the Sierra Club California, Andy helped to lead organizations' efforts, Sierra Club's efforts, to initiate its statewide clean energy campaign and continue to support the movement for a just transition towards 100% clean energy. And just is a key word here. He has worked also to help implement AB 32, a huge climate bill, obviously in California, the key climate protection law. And his advocacy led to passage of state regulations that clean up toxic pollution from diesel trucks. He has served as a delegate to the United Nations Climate Conference since 2009, which I'm extremely excited to talk about. He served as a representative of the Sierra Club and also urged the United States and other countries to adopt strong greenhouse gas restrictions, targets to protect our climate, culminating with a landmark Paris Agreement and its implementation. I am so excited, Andy. Talk about all of those things and many more. And as I mentioned, we've been friends and colleagues for a long, long time. But I also, I don't know, where did you grow up? What inspired you to work on environmental issues and also workers' rights issues? So if you want to share a little bit who you are from your own personal perspective, and so where did you start? Where did you grow up and what influenced you? A lot of questions. You can start with where you grew up.
A lot of questions. Hi, Olga. It's great to be with you. Good afternoon on this Friday after Election Day. It feels like it's been a whole year this week. So it's hard to think back to, I've been in Berkeley for over 20 years. I grew up in the Bay Area in San Mateo County, and I had really grown up there my whole life. I've been in the Bay Area my whole life in a community that really values social justice, environmental protection. The Bay Area is such a wonderful place. And so it was very hard to ever leave. I went to college at UC Berkeley. And but before that, I grew up in San Mateo County. And that's where my family still lives.
That's a very different county, isn't it? So what did your parents do? Did it influence your sort of path forward?
My mom is a special education teacher, and my dad is a university professor who just recently retired from UCSF medical school. So a lot of people in both among my parents and my extended family are involved in either nursing or medicine or education, often working with people with disabilities. And in that way, a lot of my law practice relates to environmental protection, but it also relates to disability rights, civil rights, and racial justice, gender equality. And I've learned a lot from, I think, some of those values of taking care of each other. When people in the medical profession have an unbelievable dedication to their work. It's amazing how many, just thinking about my own parents and clients who I've had from the medical profession who just will keep working well past ordinary retirement age. People are so dedicated to their work. But I think it's also helped me appreciate differences between people. And I think that informs a lot of how I view the way we need to pay attention to the programs that need to be designed for a just transition. So I very much appreciate what my parents taught me and the values that brings. I first got to learn about environmental crises, environmental concerns from a wonderful a junior high school teacher in middle school. It was just after 1992. The Rio conference where the original sustainability goals were adopted. What we were just learning about the science of climate change in a very serious way. And I had an excellent science teacher in junior high school who just went through the greenhouse gas effect. And it was very new in the scientific community. It was virtually unheard of to much of the world, but at a relatively young age, I got to learn what was happening, and I feel like it had a pretty big influence on me in understanding what were the challenges facing us ahead.
Did he teach about the frog effect also?
She did teach us about wildlife
I don't know.
a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, at the same time, we were facing a very serious crisis in the ozone layer, and there wasn't really an end in sight. And that affected people so much more immediately. To think that you could go outside and in the course of your own life have serious permanent injuries and cancer risks because you go outside and the sun burns you and causes serious health effects. That crisis was so much more immediate. And the world really responded. The world transitioned out of aerosols that depleted the ozone layer. It is the greatest global success story in fixing atmospheric pollution. And I don't see why we can't do it again, but for just our addiction to oil. And it's taken a long time for the global community, especially us in the United States, to recognize that climate change is here. And it affects us now, and it will affect future generations even more.
I like how you think globally, and absolutely, thinking about the UN and other countries and globally, it gives us such a great perspective. I had a conversation yesterday with a friend though, and we were talking about environmental protection, sort of, consumerism and laws, legislation versus educating consumers. And I think that aerosols probably were success stories because we can transition to something else, which is pretty, user friendly, so to speak. I think that addiction to fossil fuels is probably, because nobody wants to give up cars. Jacob and I, from the, one of the staff members within the chapter also were joking, like, bad environmentalists would both like to drive, So I think that this combination of providing laws and regulations and also solving sort of problems on the consumer level, providing, better products that we can substitute for those that consume fossil fuels, I think probably is also, and a lot of corporations actually involving themselves in research and implementation. Anyway, one little tangent here. And just goes back to so many people in our childhood, especially influence us. So what did you take your passion? Did you, you went to law school, but between then and the teacher, was there any sort of interest, and what did you do? How did you continue that passion?
One other thing that I would highlight, it's a bit funny, but I've surveyed other people in my general age group, people who are in this cusp, but you know, among older millennials, might remember a music video by Van Halen, which is not even a political band, but they did a music video in the early age of music videos. I was still in that late junior high territory, and MTV was just getting started, and we had cable at home, and I saw the music video to the song Right Now. And what was really interesting about that is, you know, my parents didn't really talk about a lot of problems in the world. You know, I think they tried to protect me from that. And I think it's really hard, you know, if you have the privilege of being able to avoid problems in the world, while you're a child, what parent wouldn't want to do that, at least until you get to high school. But watching that video, it brought me into a different place, you know, that while the song itself is really bland, I gotta say, don't read the lyrics and expect to be inspired. It's the images in the video. You are seeing homelessness in the streets. You're reading captions that are showing social inequity. If like me, you were aware of what was happening in climate change and what it meant in the future, because I believe I had that lesson before watching that, the overall message starts to ring in that there are big problems in the world, and you can take steps forward if we act right now. And I take that with me with so much of the work that I do. I went to UC Berkeley after doing some exercises in high school that involved you know, doing some theater work for recreation.
Theater?
Played yeah, I did school plays, and I worked in I played on the tennis team, and you know, had a good set of fun in high school, but when I got to UC Berkeley, it came at a very interesting time. There were some big changes happening with rental housing laws, and Berkeley had not built much new apartment housing, especially near campus, in decades. And so the combination of the new rental housing law and the lack of additional supply in Berkeley, it caused an acute and I think a long-lasting homelessness crisis right then, my freshman year. And
Which year was
saw
that, Andy?
that was 1998. So in the fall of 1998, property owners took their units off the market, looking to increase their rents after the Costa-Hawkins rental housing law took effect in 1999. There hadn't been enough new housing built, and all of a sudden we had this dramatic supply crisis with many of my classmates sleeping on the streets or in BART stations or couch surfing. And that sprung me into action. I got involved in the Associated Students. I worked on surveys to document the problem. We started going to planning commission meetings, zoning board meetings. We organized our classmates to be really the only voice in the city of Berkeley at the time in the city of Berkeley's update to the 2000 general plan, to the general plan that was adopted in the year 2000, to build more housing, rezone many of the commercial corridors to include more apartment housing, and to also increase the amount of affordable housing that would be built in the city. We also targeted the university campus, and we staged some camp-ins at the Chancellor's Mansion, which was a pretty dramatic event. We got on. We went to. It was similar to the Occupy movement, but much smaller. We only had about 3 tents that were at the foot of the Chancellor's Mansion, and it was very cordial. That the Chancellor's wife brought us tea and cookies every night. You know, we were just told Yeah, I know. They understood the problem. They very much understood the problem, but they just weren't doing anything about it. So we went there to make a statement that it's not enough to just talk about the problem. They needed to do something. And by the end of the week, we had been on TV every night on the nightly news, and the campus announced at the end of the week they were going to build housing on some of the sites that we were calling for new dormitory housing to be built on. And so that action was a big success my sophomore year. So I continued to do leadership among the campus community for new housing and improving the Berkeley community throughout my college years. Got involved in starting a transit pass for a universal transit pass for students. And meanwhile, we're seeing the climate crisis getting worse and worse. I learned about the importance of having people living close to where they're working and spending their daytime as a way of reducing commutes. We were fighting in some cases very large parking garages, and instead of getting the housing that we needed, we wanted to improve transit access. And so through my college education, I learned a lot about what does good city planning mean for connecting housing with transportation, with our environmental problems. And that led me to also in the meantime, the Sierra Club led an amazing campaign in Alameda County that passed a voter-approved urban limit line. And I didn't have very much to do with the creation and construction of that campaign. Other leaders in the club had been very involved getting it together and fighting for stopping sprawl in eastern Alameda County. But as a student, I had the opportunity, and this is what got me involved as a young person into the Sierra Club, just making phone calls and getting the word out to pass Alameda County Measure D. And that was really inspiring. And it was because there were
you were talking about the limit, the urban limit line, so measure known as a Measure D, obviously.
Yeah, we hear about it still. We the Measure D is very effective for stopping sprawl and focusing growth on the urban core. And many other, we're not the only county that's doing it. Contra Costa County has voter approved urban limit line. The North Bay counties have an urban limit line. There are all the communities in Santa Clara County have that too. So we joined. We were leading the effort actually in the Bay Area to do that. And so I think environmentalists have been very proactive in working to stop sprawl, protect the green belt. And it's important also for environmentalists who are active in the urban core to be creating focused ways to have sustainable growth that balances affordable housing to make sure that we're reducing commutes, the impact of greenhouse gas emissions, in addition to conserving land. So that's some of the experiences that I brought with me in my college years, and that inspired me to run for the city council in Berkeley at the age of 22. It was pretty remarkable. It hadn't been done successfly at that young age before, although Assemblymember or Senator Nancy Skinner has had one previously, and when city elections were done citywide. But I had been appointed to the city zoning adjustments board and ultimately served on Berkeley zoning board for about 5.5 years, and it was a wonderful opportunity to take what I was talking about into action, to be able to work with neighborhood groups to make new multifamily housing projects work for their neighborhoods. So we created a new community consensus in Berkeley to help that smart growth happen, and we were able to build or permit about 2,500 new units in the city during those 5.5 years, which is more than the last 2 decades combined.
Wow.
So I'm proud of that work.
Yeah, so many things that you mentioning. I was like, oh my God, I was like, I want to just back up a little bit. So first of all, zoning board, because I don't want to assume that everybody who is listening are familiar intricately with the local government. So I want to make sure that people, can understand and also can take some actions if they want to. So local governments obviously have different commissions, committees, departments, and you can influence local governments in many different levels. It doesn't have to be necessarily at mayor and council. Yeah, Berkeley, for example, has zoning board, also a rent board. So different designations of dealing with different issues, but you can go to those boards that make pretty significant decisions that some of them do not have to be ratified by the council. So it fairly independent boards. And I encourage people who are listening who are not yet involved in local government, where a lot of decisions are made that impact your life immediately. We're all voting for the president and for, maybe assembly, senate, but it's extremely important to pay attention to the local races because people that you elect to those bodies that make those decisions on zoning laws, on building, on rent control, et cetera, making decisions that many of us are going to be impacted or are impacted. But you know what? I also wanted to, Andy mentioned mentioned that environmental groups are actually doing double work in a sense that we are doing a lot of work on protecting green belts and open spaces and pristine lands. But we're also pushing for laws and regulations that build inclusionary housing, meaning that more affordable housing built within the market rate, and also upzone, and upzoning meaning just to allow higher buildings to be built within the urban limits. And this is very important. And a lot of people don't want to see their cities change, but if we want to protect nature and protect habitat that ultimately protects our life and our lifestyle, we have to be willing to build up within the urban limits. And of course, transportation, working within those urban limits becoming so much more important. So thank you for all your—
That's right, Olga. And so around that time, I also went to UC Berkeley again to get a master's in city and regional planning, where I focused on transportation planning and learned about a lot of these things. Had the opportunity to study under really great experts who have been the mentors to transportation leaders all around the nation. And it was a wonderful opportunity. And I wrote a master's thesis project for a great organization in the Bay Area called Transform. And we had a project that had the opportunity to have our regional planning organization, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. We asked the MTC to stop building transportation rail extensions out into places where they wouldn't have new riders. MTC had been planning big extensions that cost billions of dollars out into big parking lots, out into places that were very low density. And it doesn't make sense to have a station out in the middle of nowhere. Around the same time, we saw South San Francisco actually send redevelopment money to the development of a Costco that was right next to their new BART station. It made no sense. So much of what BART was doing was just not good planning. So what we asked BART to do, or what we asked MTC to do, was to change the way they funded transportation projects and only fund rail extensions or other major investments after the local government had provided a good station area plan that would have enough riders. And MTC agreed. They adopted much of our proposal. And it was really the first episode in the Bay Area of a regional entity reinforcing good planning practices. And I'm excited that that sense of regionalism was helpful in what MTC chose to do. And we still have a lot more work to do. We have some cities that are moving forward in housing planning, We have some cities that are behind. And we also have some proposals that go a little bit too far. Sometimes one size fits all zoning proposals at the state level might have the opposite effect. It might have some challenges for community acceptance and being able to have the appropriate environmental review. But it is really important to be thinking regionally and to be building, have a result that means we are getting housing near mass transit. We need to be doing better with that regional planning.
And then
around that time.
Yeah, I want you to highlight and don't want to glaze over because maybe people, to bring governments together to work on an issue regionally is extremely difficult because we elected officials have a lot more time dedicated to their local communities and listening to their constituents, which they should be doing. And I think there's not as much time dedicated to sort of long-term planning or because people don't have resources, human resources, and sort of governments a lot of times strapped for resources actually. So I wanted to highlight the work that you've done or contributed to the work that you've done because it's a huge undertaking to bring people together and make them work together. I didn't actually realize that you have the master's degree in planning. I was like, how many degrees do you have?
just 3. So there's
I
went to law school.
I love it. Just 3. That's all. So which ones?
The bachelor's degree, the master's in city planning, and then I worked for Supervisor Keith Carson between my master's degree and law school. And while I was in law school, I also that's when I started working for the Water District. That's when I ran for EBMUD. Former director Helen Burke, who has been a longtime environmental and Sierra Club leader. She had served on EBMUD for 16 years. And before my predecessor retired, she encouraged me. She was serving on the Northern Alameda County Sierra Club with us. And she encouraged me to start taking a closer look at EBMUD. She had seen my work with regional government and had fought herself to preserve the ultimate service boundary for EBMUD. And so it was great to join EBMUD and represent the communities around Berkeley, Albany, Emeryville, El Cerrito, Kensington, North Oakland, to be able to represent our great community at EBMUD to be able to preserve our water quality and protect the water source and the environment that we steward.
And then our water is coming from Mokelumne River, is that right? And from, I'm blanking on the name, of course, when I need it from Hetch Hetchy, correct? That's why we have an incredible water here in the East Bay. I have to say, thank you for your work. Because if you travel outside of Oakland, outside of Bay Area, the water is very, very different. So I think
we have great water quality here. There is a common misconception that the whole Bay Area gets its water from Hetch Hetchy. San Francisco Public Utilities Commission has the water rights to Hetch Hetchy, and they do deliver outside of San Francisco. So they supply water to some of Southern Alameda County, to some of the South Bay, to the peninsula. So San Francisco has a reach that goes beyond the city limits, but EBMUD formed around just after the Hetch Hetchy system was built. That's when East Bay leaders started to think, well, we're urbanizing around the city of Oakland. We need to make sure that we have a utility system that's working for us. There were private water companies that were failing in the mission to provide clean, reliable water, much like what San Francisco had gone through at the early 1900s. And the earthquake is what spurred them to need to look further out to have a very secure water system. Around the same time, that's when East Bay leaders secured the water rights to the Mokelumne River and then formed EBMUD in the 1930s.
I love learning things. So yeah, now you reminded me. It's like, yeah, I think I knew that, but you're working in that, so it's obviously great. And I'm so I'm geeking out a little bit on the composting and what's so important, I think, for the East Bay Mod. That, and correct me if I'm wrong. But by the way, I sort of been saying that statistics, but maybe you can correct me. You have biodigesters, and biodigesters, you basically are able to collect food scraps and churn those food scraps into energy and into sludge and into potentially compost. So, and you supplying produce methane to supply energy. So you supply ports with part of their energy, right? I thought 20%, something like that, or am I making it up?
I'm not sure how much of the port's energy is what they've
Oh,
purchased
cool.
from us, but yes, what we have a wonderful resource recovery program at the main wastewater treatment plant in Oakland. It sits right in the middle of, or right on the side of the maze, where we treat the wastewater that comes through the communities in the special district that we operate. So the wastewater that comes from the Kensington, El Cerrito area, Berkeley, Albany, Emeryville, Oakland, and Alameda, and Piedmont, those communities' wastewater flows into the East Bay Mud main wastewater treatment plant. And our organic waste, when it decomposes, it makes methane. And methane is a very potent greenhouse gas. When you look out over the 100-year period, it's considered to be about 20 times more potent than carbon dioxide. But methane is a short-lived greenhouse gas. When you look at it through a more 20-year lens, which I think is really relevant in this time of urgency, methane is about 85 times more potent than carbon dioxide. So anything that we can do to reduce methane and or recover the resource, the embedded energy of methane, is very important to do to be able to protect our climate while we're working on other technologies and other reduction strategies. Methane is something that is easy to tackle, and we've got to do it. So early on, East Bay Mud was the first utility in the country to start digesting our organic wastewater. After the material is dewatered, it goes into a capped digester, where we trap the methane, prevent almost all of it from getting out, and we run the methane through a turbine, and we do burn it into carbon dioxide, but in that way it's carbon dioxide getting into the atmosphere and not methane. But meanwhile, we get reusable energy out of it. There's no other way to prevent the methane from getting out into the atmosphere except for the process that we use. So it's considered by scientists to be biogenic and the appropriate way to recover the resource that's involved. So we're able to create baseline electricity. That's electricity that can be used at all times of day. It's considered renewable energy, and we avoid the more potent methane gas from getting released into the atmosphere while creating that renewable energy. What I'd really like to see us be able to do, though, is expand into more food waste. So we have home food scraps, and there are some challenges dealing with home food scraps that we can chat about. But the biggest opportunity is restaurant commercial food scraps. We're already taking a large grocery store and industrial food scraps. But the biggest problem that we have right now is from a real land sustainability perspective, we have to put it all in the same soup. And it would be great to be able to have a reusable compost that can help regenerate soil. Because when we go ahead,
I want to back up a little bit because I don't want to, because we are sort of, I'm not a specialist, but we've been working on that. So I want to make sure that we're not taking people on this road of, what are we talking about anymore? You know,
Taking a step back, yeah.
yeah, taking a step back a little bit because we're talking really just, you know, again, correct me if I'm wrong, we're talking about black water, gray water that comes from our bathrooms or from our houses that we use, that goes into digesters, and that's where the process that you were talking about taking. I don't want to get into details of turbines because I actually don't even know. It's like I need to visit the facility again. You know, methane is processed because the bacteria is involved in digesting those biomaterials. Methane is released. This methane is converted to the CO2, and CO2 basically released. Now we are also switching to talking about dealing with food scraps, and food scraps are very high, have high potency for releasing those also gases. We don't capture them. And I think that's important to mention how incredibly important composting is. If you have food scraps, don't throw them into your garbage, because then it goes to landfill and it rots there and basically takes tremendously more landfill space that we actually need. I made a trip a few years ago actually to a waste management facility in San Leandro, and I was actually stunned that I thought that plastics comprised the most of the bulk of the landfill, and they say no, actually food scraps, or you know, yard waste, food scraps that people just throw into the garbage, and if you don't have facility to separate that, it's difficult to deal with it. It goes into the waste. So importance of composting, importance of putting yard scraps into your green bin, etc. So I just wanted to separate that a little bit. But yes, in the food scraps, if you collect them from restaurants, it's very clean. You get no mixture of green waste, branches, trees, etc. You just get that to the facility. And then what can you do at the facility in the very sort of basic steps, Andy?
That's right. So we have a amazing facility. We're about to release some online tours so that members of the public can get a virtual tour of the facility and see what we do there, both the water treatment side as well as the food waste to energy side. We have a 10 megawatt turbine that's a power generation station that powers renewable electricity, and we use some of that electricity to power the Port of Oakland. So it's an amazing facility, and I'm proud that we're the first utility in the country to do it. We were also the first utility in the country to start taking food waste. And what the opportunity that I think we could have in the future, as you said, Olga, so many people think that their food waste is garbage, but it's not. That is waste, because when that food is out in the landfill, it releases that same methane that I was just talking about. And that means that a very short-lived climate pollutant is going to be accelerating global warming. So what we can do is find ways to get that those food scraps into a methane digesting program. And we are able to take commercial food scraps and mix them into the stream. What I would like to see is a way to separate those streams so that we're able to take the food stream.
The black water and gray water streams, that's what we're talking about, yeah.
Right, yeah, I'm not sure if we, usually when we talk about gray water, we're talking about kind of at your home, rooftop capture or into your garden. But when you're thinking about what kind of compost would you like to put in your garden, we're usually not encouraging you to take the biosolids that are coming out of the wastewater plant. So we're not encouraging that. Biosolids are a very serious land conservation problem, and if we're going to do food recycling properly, I think we need to find a way to take that food stream to be able to reuse it into reusable compost that can be used on farms, that can be used in backyard gardens. So we need our cities to come together. And I know we've had conversations in Oakland and in Berkeley and El Cerrito about this long-term vision. We need to find a way to have a coordinated approach so that those food scraps, we recover the energy waste and we recover the nutrient waste and don't add to the biosolids problem. And it takes working together to make that kind of solution happen.
Yes, and I'm going back to my conversation with a friend that I just mentioned earlier, that I think that education of everybody involved, consumers, us, is so important, because what we do at home has tremendous impact on what's happening in the world. And we think sometimes, oh, it's just me, well, no, it's just you, it's just your neighbor, it's just your neighborhood, just your town. So, educate yourself, make sure that you listen in the know. I mean, Andy, you and I probably need to just do a separate episode. I say it with all my friends and all my guests who join me here, that we should probably do a separate episode on just, composting, on biosolids, biofuels, all of that, because it's for some people actually might be interesting topic, because it goes back to your home and what can I do personally to be a solution in the problem of the climate change. But anyway, I want to step away from EBMUD, because I feel like we can go into those geeky subjects digesting our waste. But you're involved in so many things. How do you find time? How do you feel? And you also, my experience from you, that you are always, no matter what, and we've both been in very difficult situations, you're very upbeat, you're very positive, you're very, sort of collegial, you're always, looking for solutions rather than sort of conflict. Do you have any practices, physical exercise, mental exercise that you implement in your life on a daily basis that help you with that, sustaining that high level of activity and high level of sort of mental acuity and mood?
I get plenty of sleep, and so I think it's important to if you catch yourself on a daily routine where you're not getting enough sleep, to do something about that, because I feel like I'm always at my best when I'm getting enough sleep. And I think that's an important sustainability practice that we can practice personally. Of course, the working world requires us to set alarm clocks and get to work when everybody's out working. But that means that having a routine and using the weekends to rest is so much more important. Before the pandemic, I practiced yoga on a pretty regular basis. I exercise at a gym on a regular basis. So it's been quite a bit different now, because I'm really excited that after years and years of yoga, I actually have the routine up here. I didn't actually need to have the routine repeated. I feel like we do that to practice with other people, and I still do miss that. I really do. But I'm also just as amazed that the routine works just like clockwork. I remember every move, at least. I finish early. I'll admit that. I can't do my 1 hour yoga class. I go through all the moves that I remember. I'm pretty sure I got them all, but I end about 20 minutes early. So I think there's something about doing it there that helps you hold that pose. So maybe I'll do a video and just see if that helps me hold all the poses longer. But definitely I do a walk. During this pandemic, I've started doing an evening walk every day, and that's helped keep me sane. I keep in touch with friends on that walk. So those are ways that I think we can stay grounded, and I know that's really important to you, Olga.
Yeah, well, you actually named a lot of things that are important to me, minus yoga. I have to be honest. I do have my morning routine, which I do almost every day, which includes some yoga, but also breathing and meditation. But sleep is just so tremendous, and they're coming out with more and more research how tremendously important sleep is, just in everything, in inflammation, in disease, in mental health and physical health, etc. So sleep, I agree. I definitely need my at least 6-7 hours of sleep, if not more sometimes, and I operate. As I used to joke, if I get my 8 hours of sleep, the rest of 16, I can go at full speed, if not, faster. But sleep is extremely important. Yes, and also, that's my pet peeve a little bit with the sort of whole industrial revolution and all of the things that we are indoctrinated with. Those rhythms that we are sort of have to follow against our natural biorhythms, I think are not very healthy. So I think a lot more organizations and companies coming to realize that actually having a little bit more work rhythms that align with natural human rhythms are actually healthy, and you get much more productivity out of people when they don't have to be there at 9 o'clock in the morning, unless they really have to operate machinery. So anyway, my other tangent that I like to go, I can be accused of being socialist, but socialism has a lot of problems too. So it's like, let's develop a new human system that is actually working for humans, for their biorhythms, and for the planet. So, we're always rushing somewhere. But, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about United Nations and your work and on the oh my God, on the all the global actually agreements. So that's exciting topic for me, and I'm sure that would like to. It's like, how do you go there? What do you do? How do you shake hands with people from all over the world who are like movers and shakers and decide those humongous problems?
Yes, and if we don't get to cover global climate change enough in the last 10 minutes, I'm happy to come back for a part 2. So
I know you do the presentations also. I think that you did presentations for some volunteers in the Sierra Club, and maybe we should do that again as a part of a Sierra Club series also,
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I think there's about to be a virtual conference coming up that the United Nations is convening, and I think it would be important to manage expectations. I think that things happen in very particular stages at the negotiator level and then at the political level. And, we still don't have President Biden in the White House yet.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe we'll rejoin the Paris Accord.
Right. There's 75 days that the United States is going to spend officially not as a party to the Paris Agreement because President Trump withdrew the United States from the Paris Agreement on November 4th, the earliest date that it could occur under the terms of the agreement. President Biden has said that we are back in on January 21st, 2021. And I think everybody understands that in the global community. I am so glad that the spell is broken and, Arizona has been called. I'm not sure if, I think things are still evolving, but it looks very good among, between the 4 states that are still counting.
Hey, we're supposed to be nonpartisan, so.
I see. So, but just speaking literally.
Some leaders are clearly a little bit more climate, aware and climate challenge aware and doing things and trying to do things different.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who get involved in the international process without a lot of background and just come with their conviction and their community-based experiences. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change is the most accessible process to civil society that appears to exist in the global community. And it provides a way to engage at various levels of capacity. I feel very privileged and fortunate that I came in with experience from doing advocacy work with a non-governmental organization at the state level. So several years before I started getting involved at the UN, I worked as the director for Breathe California, a public health organization, We worked to pass AB 32, California's global climate change law. I worked on the rules that help implement the first scoping plan. That includes a range of rules from clean cars to cap and trade to other clean fuels. So there's a number of different strategies that California has been leading the nation to transition our vehicles to low emission vehicles and eventually all electric vehicles. And California just took a big step in that direction by requiring only no more gas powered vehicles to be sold after 2035. So signals like that from California make a big difference. California was the first United States jurisdiction to have an economy-wide market-based emission system that with tradable carbon credits. There's a lot of concerns about those systems from the environmental justice community. So it's important to understand what is the proper role of a system like that to be a backstop that helps the whole economy meet the overall reduction goal, and to provide some flexibility, but not leaving impacted communities behind. So having that experience with the way California developed a very successful and balanced program prepared me to be able to represent Sierra Club in its delegation to the United Nations. When I first got there in Copenhagen in 2009, I was not sure what to expect. And it was a very complicated, very upsetting conference for so many people because it didn't deliver what we needed. There are some very big global challenges of equity among developed and developing countries that are too complicated to discuss in the 5 minutes that we have left. But the same thing that we talk about in terms of a just transition here at home, we have to think about equity and a just transition at the global level too. And I think that—
Can I back up for just a second, because we keep using the just transition, and I think that there's a lot of phrases within the environmental community that have been sort of used many times, but people, just transition means that when we transition to renewable energy, when we transition to more sustainable ways of operations, we make sure that everybody benefits, not just affluent and the people who are middle upper class, but also everybody. And one thing that I'm glad you're mentioning, that I had a conversation with Hop Hopkins also from within the Sierra Club, and he wrote a huge article, and I think it was very for me it was very powerful. We cannot have climate pollution without considering some populations, some communities, disposable communities. And I think what you're bringing up, on a global scale, we actually consider some countries, not we consider, I don't consider, but the way we treat other countries, we treat them as disposable countries. And I think it's absolutely right on their behalf to be demanding that that industrial countries, more industrialized countries, actually pay their fair share. But anyway, I'm also sort of present to that we need to unpack some of those phrases that have been using so much that people sort of lands more. Anyway.
Yeah, that's I think a big part of the dialogue, and why this has been happening much too slow, is a perception among high-level United States leaders that developing countries at various times, it's been different named countries, were not proceeding fast enough. And I think some of those developing countries have changed in their capacity over the years. But meanwhile, some countries still don't have the capacity to be able to make the transition as quickly as we have. The United States is a developed country. We had a dirty phase of development in our history of growth. And some countries are still going through that dirty phase of development. And to be able to address the collective challenge of climate change, we will need to provide finance to be able to help those countries skip the dirty phase of development, to have equitable access to a clean and safe climate.
Oh, no, and also I have, one thing that came to mind. I mean, we mine resources from those countries to produce renewable energy, generation tools for our economy. And then, I mean, it's just that if you start to unpack all the global relationships and how we build our, progress, it is just so much that we really need to track. And the United States, I think, is not out of the woods by any stretch of imagination in terms of, building really truly clean economy. One thing that I want to ask you really fast. I don't know. I was like the whole law. I was like, if you can fast think, what do you think about the 2035? The Gavin Newsom put that by 2035 we have to transition to all electric, all renewable energy cars. I heard from some of my friends that it's going to kill California industry, companies going to move, etc. Do you agree, disagree?
I couldn't disagree more. It's going to help California remain the leader in the clean energy economy. What we've done for solar rooftops brought solar companies to California. What we've done with energy efficiency has spurred new companies that want to deploy energy efficiency in commercial and residential buildings across California. Our leadership in clean cars has attracted clean car manufacturers to California. And the governor's recent declaration that needs to be followed by Air Resources Board rules and federal cooperation is going to do even more of that. At some point, we do need to see more states joining California, but I think what the governor is doing is just seeing the future and getting ahead of it by making sure that we protect our climate, but also look out for the future of our economy. So I think the governor's move is very smart and is going to help lead the way.
See, Andy, and you were afraid that we are not going to be able to fill an hour. I think we can go for another couple, as always. I keep saying that, but for the last thought, what would you like to say to people? We are on a cusp of potentially having sort of new future, new reality. What is the main, 1 to 3 thoughts sort of that you would like to leave everybody with?
I think that there are so many sustainability challenges that we're facing right now in our local communities. Many people who watch the show are in the Bay Area or in California. Wherever you are, there are so many ways to get involved, whether you're concerned about climate change or other aspects of sustainability. Find an organization that you are passionate about helping and get involved. There are so many volunteer and nonprofit, professional, and governmental analyst and leadership roles that can help you make a contribution to fighting climate change and protecting our planet. And I would encourage you to reach out to either Olga or me and or other people in your community and find a way to get involved and do a part, because we've got to tackle climate change and our sustainability issues right now.
Thank you, Andy. Yes, Sierra Club is one of those organizations. Obviously, we're very dedicated, and there are so many other organizations that tackle specific issues that please join. I think we all need to act and act now. Thank you so much, Andy. As always, been fascinating.
Olga, thank you for having me. It's been great to talk.
Yes, and I can totally tell that your family is in education. You are so just wealth of information, and you read you can talk, it seems like, on any subject. So, and now I understand only 3 educations. Anyway, thank you so much, Andy. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Next Friday we'll see you again at 12 o'clock on Friday. Every Friday we're re-energizing in the know. Please join us. Please send me suggestions if you want to hear and learn about specific person in the community who are engaged and involved in sustainability, environmental movement, and work. Please share. I'll be happy to talk to them and share their wisdom with you. Andy, thank you so much. Always a pleasure. stay with me for just a couple of minutes. We'll debrief, and everybody else, a happy post-election world, hopefully. You can tell where my so anyway, thank you so much. Be well, be safe, take good care of yourself and your loved ones. Bye, everybody.